Hi, I'm Keith, JD Twitch from Optimo, and we're in my garage here in Glasgow. So I picked 10 Scottish records that I particularly love, perhaps a little skewed towards a particular era, but these are just records that I guess have been with me for such a long time and had, you know, that I still listen to this day. The sensational Alex Harvey band, they're a little bit before my time. I grew up in Edinburgh and I vaguely had heard of them. When I first moved to Glasgow, a lot of people that I first got to know were hugely into this, and it's something that I love to this day. There's a certain element of what he did, I think, influenced punk rock. It's not punk rock in the slightest, but it is kind of dirty, original rock and roll with synthesizers in it, especially on the track Faith Healer. So that's my first pick. Very Glasgow record.
Only one you had, you wanna take away the pain.
Next up, this is like a very beloved band of mine. This is an Edinburgh band called the Fire Engines. There's a musical movement from New York called No Wave, and this is, I guess, the nearest Scotland came to that. You could jokingly call it Nay Wave. It's like very stripped down, influenced by things like Ornette Coleman and the Contortions, but there's a huge like funk element to it. And they obviously recorded this in one take. When you hear the song, it starts, they fluff it, and then they just keep going.
Excuse me.
Oh, this is a guy who's an absolute hero of mine. He was called Robert Rental, and he comes from a little town called Port Glasgow, outside Glasgow, and he made this song that I'm obsessed with called Double Heart. It's a beautiful song, but it's synthesizer. It's an early Mute records who put out at that time some of what to this day remain my ultimate favourite records. Sadly, he never really got any acclaim, and I think he was a little disenchanted and gave up making music to look after his family very early on. It's one of these things you wonder what might have happened if he had continued. I kind of think he might have been a sort of Arthur Russell type figure if he hadn't packed it in. Next one this is actually Robert Rental's best friend, who was a guy called Thomas Lear, who was also from Port Glasgow, and they both moved to London to, I guess, make their fortunes. Neither of them succeeded. Thomas Lear a little bit more. He ended up working with Trevor Horn a bit later, but never did any great success. This is kind of the ultimate DIY single, you know, in like hand-printed, photocopied sleeve. And the song pipeline is really beautiful. The vocals on it are very quiet, but it turns out that he was recording it in a bed sit and his girlfriend was asleep, so he had to sing quietly so as not to disturb her. So I grew up in a little village outside Edinburgh, and in the village along from where I lived, there were these guys that, you know, when I was 11 or 12, that were just the freakiest people I had ever seen, just dressed very avant-garde, not punk, just in some kind of weird fashion that they were developing themselves. And I later found out that it was a band called The Scars, and they made this great single on a famous Edinburgh label called Fast Forward, who released the first Gang of Four and the first Human League records.
They friends with the suit and Charles told tales and true songs.
Well, next up, so talking about where I grew up in this village called Balerno, and the only other thing of any renown that ever came out of there was Boards of Canada. So I thought I would choose a Boards of Canada record. This is maybe my favourite record. They kind of have this myth behind them that they live in this strange place in the hills, and it's not that strange, but it's a very beautiful little village on the outskirts of Edinburgh. When they very first started, and I was doing this techno club in Edinburgh called Pure, and I kind of, it was one of them or one of their friends passed on a demo, and we had a record label, myself and the guy I ran that club with at the time, and we got this demo by this band, Boards of Canada, which we decided not to release in one of the great A&R moves of all time. It's not a great record, but it's got one absolutely amazing song on it, which turns out is a favourite of all sorts of people. Joachim from Tiger Sushi did an edit of it. Apparently it's one of Tiga's favourite songs. It's a song called Wet Job, and it's this, you could play it in a dance set. It's a very hypnotic, rhythmic track that sounds kind of out of time and place with almost all music of that era, and with a kind of monotone Glasgow voiceover on it. The rest of the record is okay. They then went on to become one of the worst bands Glasgow's ever produced, called the Silencers.
And it wasn't above the syndicate for an over Sunday shift. It's hey, bodyguard G, will you judge a pre?
This is kind of a weird one. I don't know if anyone watches this, about Alan Lomax, who was he was a song hunter, I guess is the best way to say it. He travelled throughout America and then ultimately through the world collecting folk music. He kind of believed that this music was going to die out, and if he didn't record it, it was going to be lost forever. And in a lot of respects, he was absolutely right. He came in the 50s, I think he made 2 or 3 trips to Scotland and recorded various, from crofters out on the islands to school children in schools, and collected all these really beautiful Scottish songs that have been completely forgotten. So as a fan of Mr. Lomax, I thought I'd choose that as one of the great Scottish records.
For the Gargy in the Kier is not sweet upon your noggins, and will launch as a bleed to the next button can.
All this confusion.
This is a band from Glasgow I released called Golden Teacher, and whether I'd released it or not, they've just become one of my favourite bands ever, and I just get better and better, and are a live phenomenon. Sadly, they don't get a play that often, but I saw them recently in Glasgow, played to 600 people, and I've never seen a room so transfixed and all moving in unison to, there's partly their local, and people will always give a local artist, and you're one of these bands that you just think, wow, more people need to know about this. So that's my gratuitous self-promotion on this very nice sleeve that they made themselves. You can hear bits of Arthur Russell in it, you can hear bits of Chicago house, you can hear African rhythms. In the kind of DIY nature of the recording in many ways, you can hear the kind of thrash punk spirit. So it's all these things colliding. Finny Tribe, who when I was a teenager I used to see them play, and they were really good. Then they released this record, The Testimony, which became I have to say, I don't like the word Balearic. It seems like a wishy-washy genre to me that you can stick anything in, but this song became a Balearic classic in the early days of Ibiza clubbing, and then DJs brought it back, and it became a bit of a dance anthem, and it's something I've always played, always loved.